Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Today we're joined by Senator Chris Hansen, Senator Bob Rankin, Majority Leader Danae Escar, J.J. Ament, President of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, Stephanie Salazar Rodriguez, a homeowner and business owner. You know, in Colorado, property values have been going up. And if you're fortunate enough to have been a homeowner, that's a good thing. The only problem is that your income might not be going up as fast as your property taxes based on the appreciation. And today, along with the news from last year, we're announcing that we're going to fix that and cut property taxes in Colorado to make sure everybody can afford to stay where they live and to save families money. This is on top of the $800 per couple, $400 per person that every Coloradan will get. This is a 2-year property tax relief package. The average homeowner will save about $274 in the first year, with additional savings in the second year. And that's based on about a $500,000 home. So some folks in areas where homes are even more expensive will save significantly more than that. This is on top of property tax cuts that were passed last session. I would also make sure that every Coloradan knows about a very important program that's being rolled out, that every homeowner will be able to defer any increase in property taxes above 4%. And that's a very exciting opportunity to make sure you don't have to pay them out of pocket. But what we're doing today is giving every homeowner an average of $274 back in their pocket. But you can hold on to more of your hard-earned money with this very simple property tax cut. The package also includes a property tax cut for businesses. J.J. Ament will speak to that, but our Main Street businesses, the backbone of our economy, will also receive a significant property tax cut as a result of today's legislation. As property values rise, it can be a burden on homeowners and business owners to keep up with the costs. And that's why it's important that Republicans and Democrats in the legislature, along with the business community, are coming together to say, we get that, and we want to reduce the burden of property taxes. This proposal is $700 million of property tax release over 2 years, and that's on top of the $400 million of property tax relief last year. So the combined savings is about $1 billion in property tax relief, 2023 and 2024. The average small business owner of a $500,000 retail storefront or office will save about $1,200. And these are estimated savings, and of course, statewide it varies on location and where you are. In addition, as I mentioned, Colorado is the first state in the country to let all homeowners defer increases above 4%. And I think that what's key here is that, you know, really every member of the legislature is hearing about this from constituents, that we need to do something about rising assessments and costs. It's expensive enough to buy a home. And by the way, the legislature has taken a lot of action, the transformational investment in affordable housing, a number of other ways that we look at this. But one piece of that housing puzzle, one piece of affordability is property taxes. And cutting property taxes an average of $275 for a home puts that money right back in the pocket of Coloradans who will be able to use it to grow our economy or save for their future. With that, I'll turn it over to one of our legislative leaders on both last year's property tax reform and this year's property tax reform, and a member of the Joint Budget Committee, Senator Chris Hansen.
Thanks, Governor. Well, a very good afternoon to everyone. I'm really pleased to be continuing to do this work with this team that we've assembled here today, working closely with the Governor's Office and a bipartisan bill that follows up on the success we had last year with Senate Bill 293. And I'm pleased to be joined in the Senate from my colleague on the Joint Budget Committee, Senator Bob Rankin, who you'll hear from in just a moment. You know, I represent East Denver in the Colorado State Senate, and in Denver, like most of the Front Range and many parts of Colorado, we're seeing rapid appreciation in the cost of housing and in the value of housing. And that means that individual homeowners, renters are seeing that property tax show up in their cost of living and their overall cost in their budgets at a household level. And we need to act, and that's exactly what we're announcing today. A follow-up to the 293 from last year, which was $400 million in relief. We are now adding on to that an additional $700 million in property tax relief, and it's immediate and it's certain. And that is something that we can deliver here in the last few days of the legislative session. It's also important to note that we're delivering this relief without needing to make any cuts to important services at the local level, think fire districts, water districts, library districts, et cetera. And most importantly, we can fulfill our commitment to make sure that we are funding K-12 and are on track to eliminate the budget stabilization factor next year. This package has been built with that in mind from the very get-go, and we can deliver on that promise. Also, you heard the governor mention the Deferral Program. That was something we started with Senate Bill 293. We have additional resources we're putting into that program to make sure taxpayers know that they have that option, and that's going to really help folks on fixed income around the state be able to defer any rises, any increases in property tax, and make sure that they can stay in their homes. So building on that success, we extend 293 all the way into 2024 to deliver on that full package of an additional $700 million in relief. And so with that, let me turn it over to the other sponsor last year of Senate Bill 293, Majority Leader Danae Eskar.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here. You know, this legislation seriously just builds on the work that we've done to keep Colorado's property taxes at some of the lowest in the nation and save homeowners and businesses money. Nearly every single part of our state is seeing rising home values and costs. So we're taking further action to save people money. That, when combined with what we did last year, will provide Coloradans with over $1 billion in property tax relief. I'm proud that we've been able to come together to provide this necessary relief to protect funding for our schools, our fire departments, our libraries, those critical services that create the vibrant communities that we know and love in Colorado. This responsible plan will allow us to continue to increase funding for K-12 schools and save homeowners and businesses money. With Colorado's economy picking up and jobs recovering quickly, this is the time we must ensure that we can continue to put more money into our classrooms. At the same time, communities like mine and Pueblo need this property tax relief today. What we're doing with this legislation is making sure our economy can continue to grow without significant increases in property taxes, and we're making sure that we can continue to put more money into classrooms to increase teacher pay and prepare students to thrive. The time to act is now, and I'm excited to be a part of this team to bring this forward once again. Part of that team, though, are the homeowners of Colorado that really need this relief now. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Salazar Rodriguez, who is a Denver homeowner, to talk about what this legislation will mean to her.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Salazar Rodriguez, and thank you so much for having me today to allow me to share my story. I'm a second-generation native Denverite, and I have a family history that goes back over 100 years. So you can imagine, as a longtime resident of Denver, I have witnessed many changes. For the past 3 years, I have been a property owner in the Marley neighborhood in Southwest Denver. Also, I'm a small business owner, and I'm struggling to navigate the increased cost of living from rising gas prices, food, and energy. It's hard to keep up. And as all of you are keenly aware, the housing prices in Colorado continue to increase and have resulted in higher property taxes each year. I truly fear how the increase in my 2023 taxes will impact me financially. The proposal to reduce property taxes will greatly lessen the financial burden for property owners like myself. Currently, my monthly mortgage payment is close to $2,000. Combined with the reduction passed this year, this bill will save me close to $200 on my property taxes. Thank you so much to Governor Polis and the legislators for doing something now to help homeowners in Colorado like myself. Thank you.
We now want to introduce from the Joint Budget Committee, Senator Bob Rankin.
Thank you, Governor, and the team who have worked on this. I represent a good part of rural Colorado, and my concern with any statewide assessment that has been considered or, in fact, has been enacted going back to the days of Gallagher is that every one of our counties and special districts are a little different. They depend on property taxes, and their budgets depend very much on revenue, which can be disparately impacted. I, during the days of Gallagher, thought a lot about our fire communities, for example, who, if they were totally dependent on residential property, might in fact be quite concerned about their operations. This bill takes care of that. It actually uniquely has a tiered reimbursement formula for those counties who might not benefit as much as some of the larger and wealthier Front Range counties who have significant increases. So I think that's a unique aspect of this approach. In addition to, however, in addition to homeowners in residential areas, this bill also pays a lot of attention to business, and our small businesses are struggling throughout the state. So it's my pleasure to introduce J.J. Ament, CEO of Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here to throw our support behind this effort. We're grateful for the governor and these legislators as well, and even though I represent the Denver metro region and the business interests here, I really appreciate Senator Rankin's comments. As a rural guy, myself and then the Denver Chamber really does value a statewide approach that really does reflect the uniqueness of our various communities. And so thank you to the business community, our friends at Colorado Concern, others who've helped elevate this issue, and especially thank you to the governor and these legislators who are beginning to address it. We hear from chamber members all the time about costs, inflation, workforce shortages, COVID. Was there a recession in the future or not? And so relief like this cannot come at a more important or better time. While CNBC will tell everyone we're the 8th best state in America in which to do business, there are areas where we need to improve. We're 34th in cost of living. We're 38th in cost of doing business. So that's hard on businesses and it's hard on workers, both in commercial and residential areas. So again, this relief couldn't come at a better time. And it's a step toward tax relief for everyone. You know, when you have assessed values go up as quickly as they can, the property tax becomes a tax on an unrealized gain. So money that could be back invested for new employees or investments in capital to further fuel our economic recovery can be impaired. So this relief is so important, and this represents the first non-residential assessment drop in Colorado in more than 40 years. That's significant. And it allows employers then to hire more employees, invest in that growth to continue to fuel Colorado's recovery. And I also want to point out how grateful we are that the legislature is taking this on in a statutory way, in a legislative way, so that we can adjust as markets and economies change. That's really important as well. And no impact for schools or local services is also very important to us, or statewide. Now, I've never seen a bill that was introduced that was perfect from the get-go, so there will be tinkering and arguing, I'm sure. But we're really grateful for this step forward to provide property tax relief for all. And thank you again, Governor Polis and members of the legislature for bringing this forward in this session.
Thank you. Any questions? Marianne.
I have two. Number one, how are you paying for this? Number two, it's my understanding that the legislative proponents of another property tax measure do not intend to drop their measure. They don't feel like this satisfies their concerns. How do you respond to that?
So this is $700 million property tax reduction over 2 years. The part of it that is holding districts harmless and investing in schools is the one-time surplus funds that we have that are going to do that. So that's the utilization of one-time funds. You might recall that in the long bill that I signed, there was a placeholder for that of the one-time funds. There's been a lot of ballot initiatives filed in this space because it's a legitimate frustration of Coloradans, very simply. People were demanding that the legislature do something on property taxes. There's been, I think, close to a dozen ballot initiatives filed from the left and the right. I'm confident that this property tax cut relieves a lot of that pressure. It relieves that pressure valve because it provides the immediate tax cuts that people need to stay in their homes, and certainly allows for a discussion among all the stakeholders about what we need to do in the long term to protect Coloradans from property taxes associated with the rising values of their homes. Yes?
Could you, and since you were one of the sponsors, could you explain exactly how this is going to work? How are people, how is this formula being enacted, or how are you cutting down people's bills?
Yeah, you want to go into that?
Yeah, happy to. Ed, thanks very much for that question. So let me just give a little bit more detail on how the bill delivers the relief. As folks are aware, we sort of have two main categories of property in the state: residential, non-residential. And in each of those categories, we have two relief mechanisms. One is a reduction in assessment rates. So on the residential side, we're right now at 695. We're going down to 6.77 in this bill. So it'd be a reduction of the RAR. On the commercial side, we're going from 29 down to 27.9. That was the highlight that you heard from JJ and the first reduction on the commercial side in many decades. The second aspect in both categories is we will be reducing the taxable value on the non-res side by $30,000 and on the residential side by $10,000. And so that will be taken out of the calculation on total property tax that's due. And so that kind of think of that as coming out right up front, $30,000 on the commercial side, $10,000 on the residential side. And that we think is a really great way to target relief at small business and lower income households. So they get sort of a disproportionate impact of that initial change in taxable value.
On the $400 million, does that affect paper refunds at all? Does that come out of the paper refund pool?
What $400 million are we referring to?
$400 million in relief that's going back to schools and local governments?
So there was $200 million that was in the long bill. There are additional one-time surpluses in future years that would be used. And I think part of the discussion is, you know, what those would come from. They certainly wouldn't impact the income tax cut from Tabor, or if there is a Tabor surplus. But out of the $700 million in property tax cuts, as you indicated, I think the $400 million figure you brought up, that's about how much, based on estimates, will be backfilled, but the actuals could be less than that. That's just I think what the legislature wants to prepare for. But I think that most of the estimates we've seen, it would wind up being less than $400 million. Does anybody else have anything to add on that? I think that's it. Yeah.
Governor, this sets you up for, in 2 years, another big debate about
Yeah.
property taxes. I know you've got strong opinions about, for example, the income tax and how you'd like to see that work. What do you think of this argument that property tax is unrealized gains? Is there a bigger change that you personally like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a very healthy discussion, and it's much better than having a stifled discussion when the Gallagher Amendment was in place, which had a ton of unintended consequences, like particularly jacking up rates on small businesses in rural areas, and had disproportionate impact across our state. So this is a great discussion to come back to the legislature over the next year or two. That's where, you know, the different merits should be weighed. I think the people of our state absolutely want some long-term certainty about where things are going, and the process of leading up to that really just begins with this immediate relief. And I think that'll be an important part of the conversation about how we can protect people from paying property taxes that are too high. And we are, I believe, for residential property taxes, we're the 49th or 50th lowest state. I think we're the 50th lowest state for property taxes. And so that's a point of pride. Now, for businesses, we're not, because of Gallagher Amendment. So figuring that all out takes a lot of work. We're excited to roll up our sleeves, and I really think this property tax relief for 2 years is a start of a very healthy process, bipartisan process about where to go. Well, so that's a totally different question. Let me just see if there's any more on this. I'll come back to that. But any more on topic before we get to building codes, Marshall?
I feel like unfrozen caveman lawyer that maybe I don't fully grasp this, but
Sure.
how much of this is money that would have been refunded to residents at some point over the next 2 years anyways?
Let's see. Very small, because the $400 costs what, 1 point something billion, didn't it? It cost we're doing a little math for you, Marshall. So how much did the 400 cost? The 400, 800? That was like 1.5. Okay, 1.4, 1.5. Most this is 200. So basically, like maybe like $50 maybe per person. Is that right? Yeah. Somewhere around $50 of the 270 had to be refunded some way. The rest is. It would not have been refunded otherwise. So it's almost, you know, most of it, and that's our back of the envelope math here that we're trying to calculate. Does that sound right, Bob?
Yeah, roughly.
Somewhere around $50 of the 270 would have been refunded in the future with the different refund mechanism, but it would have been delayed, and who knows when people would have seen it. This is on your property tax bills 2023 and it's an additional $230 in property tax cuts. We, yeah, well, I think the best thing is to show you how that works, Marshall, afterwards. And that was, Chris can walk you through it, but that was a close back of the envelope number, which kind of also was one of your questions, I think, but that's about what it is there.
So the conversations around paying off the budget stabilization factor
Yeah.
have depended on local property tax kind of rising, but local share increasing to meet the state. What is the long-term impact of this on that ability
Yeah.
to reduce it? I mean, I thought I heard you say we're going to pay it off anyway.
So zero long-term impact. It's a 2-year property tax relief package, and so.
Just have to make it up in 2 years.
No, it doesn't make it up in 2 years. This is a 2-year relief package, and then we also want the discussion about what happens after. Do you want to address that, or? Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Jump in on that one. Yeah, so, and I realize I was referring to this in my opening remarks. So we believe this package means that we're still on track to pay off the budget stabilization factor in the next fiscal year. So we took about a 50% chunk out of it in this budget. We think we can finish the job next year, and what we're proposing here would not change that trajectory because we have a backfill mechanism. As the governor mentioned, we already set aside money in this year's budget to be ready to do that. And so we'll see no steps backward on school finance, and that puts us in a really strong position as we go into the 23-24 fiscal year.
Last question?
Is there anything in here to address people who rent or lease their residence or commercial property?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Thanks, I appreciate that. And so the answer is absolutely yes, because if you think about the property tax situation, say on a commercial lease, it's typically triple net, and so it gets immediately passed through to the tenant. And in this case, because we're delivering relief in the 2 ways that I explained, that then doesn't get passed through. So there is big benefit for commercial renters. The same is going to play out, I think, on the multifamily side or renters of houses. Typically, any change in property tax gets built into next year's rent. If that change isn't there, then it doesn't get passed through to the renter on the residential side. So we think it's going to benefit both categories directly.
And I promised to, so on the building codes bill, I'll just say, as of the last update that I had, I believe that a lot of the issues you identified have been worked out, where it's being designed in a way to save homeowners money over time. Even the net present value of those savings are significant. It's my understanding that there's been a lot of work done with home builders, with homeowners, with local governments, and that that bill, at least the last time I got briefed on it, was in a good place to save people additional money on their utility bills. Thank you. Oh, Bob, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the budget stabilization factor that you brought up, because that's been a really important part of this whole discussion. So remember, even though this is about a 50% relief on the property tax increases, there's still significant new property taxes. So what we have $840 million in the state education fund reserve at the end of this year. So our expectation is to spend the $840, and as these new property taxes come along, that we will be able to eliminate the budget stabilization factor over a 2 or 3 year period. So I just want to emphasize that was very much a part of this discussion.
Thank you, everybody.